Victory Stadium was built during World War II. When it was dedicated in 1942, it stood less as a monument to victory than an expression of hope. It has seen a lot of wins and losses over the years. Dave Matthews is said to hold the audience attendance record at Victory Stadium. His band drew 30,000 people. They say it was the largest crowd ever in Victory Stadium. Until then, the record was said to have stood at 22,500 people for a Virginia Tech VMI football game. Billed as the ultimate military college contest, the Corps of Cadets from both schools marched down Jefferson Street into the stadium before the game on Thanksgiving Day. One of the most enduring images dates back almost 40 years when a man strapped into a jetpack soared above the stadium during the Harvest Bowl, a game between VMI and the Citadel. Roanoke native George Prees came home to conduct a football clinic at Victory Stadium in the summer of '64, along with Johnny Unitas. The Baltimore Colts and the Pittsburgh Steelers had graced the stadium with professional football in a preseason game 3 years earlier. The mid-'60s brought a significant addition to Victory Stadium. Located near the Roanoke River and named for Wiley Drive, the fountain and its multicolored lights were dedicated in 1966. Over the years, Whitey Taylor accompanied controversy by bringing racing back to South Roanoke. Professional wrestlers took center stage, with a ring set up midfield in the stadium, affording fans a choice of ringside seating or a view from the bleachers. Even Lassie came home, or at least paid us a visit. The flood of '85 filled the stadium, muddy water rushing in like thin gruel into a giant soup bowl. It was the most memorable of the many times the Roanoke River rose above the steps of the stadium. Each flood took its toll.
As a sports venue, Victory Stadium was at one time, and for a long time, the Cadillac of venues in the state. With the capacity to hold 25,000 fans, the stadium hosted more than 100 college games starting in 1942. For 27 years, the stadium hosted the Military Classic of the South, as VMI and Virginia Tech squared off each November, almost always on Thanksgiving Day. The stands were almost always packed, and the halftimes were full of pageantry. And rain or shine, when the Keydets and Hokies came to the Star City, it was a big deal from one end of Jefferson Street to the other. Tech and VMI, along with UVA and a number of other schools, also took part in one other yearly matchup at the stadium, the Harvest Bowl. From 1958 to 1969, the game was played as a fundraiser for the Junior League. In this particular contest, from October of 1967, VMI beat the Citadel 22-11. As the stadium's condition deteriorated, colleges went back on campus. But college action did return to the stadium in 2000, as the Virginia Education Classic was launched as a fundraiser for TAP's initiative to get dropouts back in school. The game between traditionally black universities also turned into one of the top social events of the fall. This classic can lay claim to staging the final college game ever in Victory Stadium, as St. Paul's beat Shaw on October 29th of 2005. The stadium also hosted several NFL preseason games, including the Colts and Steelers, who played on Saturday night, August the 12th in 1961, with the star power of none other than Johnny Unitas. Semi-pro football also took several turns at the stadium with the Buckskins and Hunters, and then in 1995, the Roanoke Rush opened for business, but like its predecessor, only for a short time, folding 2 years later. High school football certainly made its mark throughout the years, bringing cheers from the Armory on one end to the Fountain on the other. And it didn't matter that on most Friday nights there were more empty seats than there were fans in the aging, cavernous facility. Lee Suggs was among the hundreds of Jefferson, Addison, William Fleming, and Patrick Henry stars to play in Victory Stadium. Ironically, Salem High School won its first state football title at Victory Stadium in 1996, beating Shenandoah. Afterwards, Salem fans swarmed the field and tore down the goalposts. But the biggest high school game ever in the stadium also involved players from the Salem community. In 1971, Andrew Lewis lost to T.C. Williams 27-0 in the state championship game. It was the game that was later part of the movie, Remember the Titans. You might also remember the River Dogs and the Wrath, Roanoke's minor league soccer teams that played from 1995 through 2000, staging many of their home games at the stadium as well. The field played host to all kinds of activities over the years, ranging from high school lacrosse to professional wrestling. Fans at matches in the 50s were given the option of sitting in the stands or in the ringside seats that were set up on the field, so fans could be up close with the villains and the good guys. And some of the good guys from the football front came back in the summers and staged youth football camps at the stadium. George Prius, Johnny Unitas, and Raymond Berry did so in 1964. Then in the late 80s and early 90s, Gary Clark and a who's who of Super Bowl champion Redskins spent weeks at the stadium for Clark's Why Say No to Drugs camps. And at the end of the decade, in 1998, the Barber twins used Victory Stadium and the River's Edge complex for their All-Star Clinic. But perhaps the most unlikely sport to grace the stadium was auto racing. Curtis Turner raced there in the 50s, but most remember the effort to revive racing in the early 90s when Whitey Taylor brought horsepower back to the Star City. There were concerns that the cars would crash into the fountain and that the noise would be unbearable for surrounding neighborhoods. But the racing was actually pretty good, although like so many things, it had a short shelf life. Mike Stevens, News 7 Sports.
Good evening. As they say, the show must go on, and it did tonight at Roanoke's Victory Stadium. An afternoon thunderstorm caused some problems for organizers of Roanoke's 100th birthday party, but as Becky Riddle reports, city officials estimate more than 30,000 people came out to share in the celebration.
The rains came and the power went off about 6:30 p.m. APCO was called immediately and a transformer was brought in from Woodrum Airport. But the electricity was restored just when the show was scheduled to begin, and the activities were underway shortly after 8. The 3,000-pound birthday cake, meanwhile, was tucked away under the stadium with security guards surrounding it. Some persons sat in the stands with umbrellas until the rain stopped, and others flooded in to take part in the city's 100th birthday party. The Centennial concert, sponsored by the Roanoke Times and World News, began with music from the Roanoke Symphony Orchestra and Dukes of Dixieland soloist. The first live performance of the Centennial song highlighted the music lineup. And there were cheers and clapping from the crowd. The sing-along was followed by a surprise presentation. The Mill Mountain Star was given to Roanoke as its 100th birthday present from the Roanoke Valley Merchants Association. The annual fireworks display was one of the main attractions of the evening, with 14 minutes of color and sparkle. And then what everyone had been waiting for, the 1.5-ton Centennial birthday cake. Candles were lit, the crowd sang happy birthday to the city, and everyone lined up to taste a piece of the largest cake in the city's history. Becky Riddle, News 7.
After a week of final preparations and last-minute tributes, the day that Victory Stadium supporters had dreaded finally arrived. Shortly before 8, the crane operator climbed into the cab and raised the wrecking ball for the first time. With a fond farewell scrawled on one side of the stadium, the crane operator added an exclamation point on the other. The brick facade and block beneath were no match for the so-called headache ball, but the pillars and beams made of reinforced concrete offered some resistance. The crews and their heavy equipment persevered through the rain, and by Tuesday afternoon they had made substantial progress.
I thought we might start off with an interesting shot for you, Natasha. This is Victory Stadium at 1:30.
Okay.
The Roanoke River is on the left. I want you to watch as the river approaches 13 feet. Watch it how it enters the field here. In the afternoon, you start to see it creep up, creep up, creep up, and it's just about filled the field. It is still rising, and that is a concern. 13 feet is the trigger point to get the Roanoke River into Victory Stadium. Ironic that as it's being torn down, that was the scene today.
As the skies cleared, the work continued. With the heavy equipment clearing the rubble of the east stands, the wrecking crew moved to the other side. On Thursday, the main press box fell. And more people turned out to watch and pay their respects to an old friend. It now looks like they will knock out the top level of the stadium here on the west side before they quit for the evening. And when they quit for the long holiday weekend, crowds gathered across the river for the Roanoke Times Music for Americans concert.
But many told us they miss Victory Stadium, especially since it's now being torn down.
The work resumed the next day, but the focus shifted to the distribution of stadium bricks. On a Saturday morning, hundreds of cars lined up.
Traffic is expected to back up along Reserve Avenue and down Franklin Road while folks wait to get their piece of Victory Stadium.
And again 5 days later until the supply was exhausted.
It appears some will do just about anything to get a piece of Victory Stadium. Around 8 o'clock, people showed up for a brick giveaway only to find Parks and Rec had packed up and left. That prompted 20 to 30 people to rip open the fence at Victory Stadium and take a souvenir for themselves. Police then arrived a short time later and kicked everyone off the property.
By the end of July, all of the bricks and reinforced concrete were gone, an empty field taking the place of a Roanoke landmark. Joe DeShiel, News 7, Roanoke.